Okay, I get asked a lot about diseases and how do you deal with this disease, that sort of thing. Well, the important thing to know first off is what type of organism caused it, or was it even an organism at all? Some diseases are what we call abiotic. They could just be nutritional. You know, it could be just a nutritional problem. But I want to talk today about things that are caused by some type of organism. Now, there are a lot of different classifications that could cause that, but I'm going to deal with just three, the big three: fungi, bacteria, and viruses. Those are the three main types of pathogens that can be a problem. Let's start with the fungi first. Now, a fungus is a multicellular organism, fairly complex compared to the other two, and it's one that doesn't reproduce super fast. You know, it's not dividing, a new organism. So a fungus, if we want to spray some chemical to kill the fungus, we don't have to do it as often. Usually every 10 days to 2 weeks or something, we hit it again, and we pretty much got it under control. It's relatively easy to control fungus diseases in plants compared to the other two types. Now, here's a fungus disease on apples. You look at these little spots. I'm not too worried about the spots, but I'm worried about what eventually will happen. This is a disease called apple scab, and it causes this kind of a symptom on the foliage, and then the fruits themselves will get, you all know what scabby apples look like. That's what'll happen. Well, I haven't sprayed my apple trees back there because they've just been kind of ignored, and I haven't worried about them too much. So probably if I use them for anything, it'll just be for applesauce. So if they got a little scab on them, I'm not too upset about it. But that's what it would look like, those of you who have apples. Let's jump over to, because we don't have all day, let's jump over to bacteria. Bacteria are single-celled, reproduce extremely fast. I'm sure all of you have had bacterial infections. And what does the doctor give you? They give you some antibiotic, which is a bactericide. It's a chemical designed to kill bacteria. And how often do you take this? Probably 2, maybe 3 times a day for 10 days, 2 weeks. You know, you're taking it very frequently. Okay, fungus, remember I said you don't really have to. 1 dose will knock it. Do it again in a couple weeks, bingo. You pretty much got the problem solved. Whereas bacteria, and I am simplifying this a little bit. Those of you who are plant pathologists, you know, my father was a plant pathologist. Don't string me up a tree here. You know, I'm trying to make it simple. Bacterial diseases are very difficult to control in plants because bacteria reproduce very fast. So we got a bacterial disease here called fire blight. And it's a pear tree. You can see little pears on there. There's a pear there and a pear down here. Well, those pears aren't going to amount to much, are they? They're already dead. And you get this blackening that works its way back. Well, it's kind of quit, and the disease is over with because it's gotten really stinking hot and dry, and that's not a real good conditions for the bacteria to grow, so the plant's kind of recovered from it. Not before it ruined the fruit, but the plant is in the recovery process. That's a disease called fire blight. What can we do to prevent fire blight? Well, it's not practical to spray that thing with streptomycin or another type of bactericide, an antibiotic. So that chemical control for bacterial diseases is probably out for plants. We're worried about the whole bunch of them, not just the individual. So it's probably out. Probably the thing to do would be to get rid of this particular pear tree. Either graft another pear tree on it that doesn't get fire blight, or yank it out and put another one that doesn't get it. There are certain types of pears that are resistant to that. They don't get it. The fire blight Erwinia bacteria could be there, but they don't get it. So that's probably the thing to do with most of your bacterial diseases. Look around, do your research, find something that doesn't get it. And that's probably your best way to deal with it. In case of bacterial diseases in a garden or something, the best thing to do is just go through when you start to see plants that have got it, yank them out and remove them from the area, get rid of them. Okay, that leads us to viruses. Viruses are probably the hardest one to get rid of, because viruses aren't even a true organism at all. They're not really even alive. All a virus is a piece of DNA or RNA covered with a protein coat, and it can't live without a host. It can't exist, can't reproduce. So what happens is the virus gets into a cell. It's sort of like those of you who've had computer viruses. Well, they call them viruses for a reason. What's a computer virus do? It gets on your computer and reprograms it. It does what it wants to do, not what you want to do. Well, that's what a real virus does. It gets into your cell, reprograms that cell, says make more of me. Quit what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to make more of me. And that's what the virus does. And so how can we control viruses? Well, it's harder, but we can do it. Once it's already there, about the only thing you can do is yank it out, remove it from the area, and hope the heck it hasn't spread in the meantime. That's pretty much your only hope with viruses. Sometimes you can go through, if it's on a tree, you can maybe go through and clip back to healthy wood, remove everything else, and hope that it hasn't spread. That's one thing you can do. Probably the best preventative for viruses, other than finding a type of plant that is resistant, and there are some, is probably the best thing you can do is keep your plant as healthy as you can. Remove all stress. So what does that mean, remove all stress? That means we want our water levels to be in the optimal range. We want it to be fertilized, but not too much. We want light levels to be what they need, but not too much, not too little. You know, we want every environmental situation as good as we can, so it's as healthy as it can be. It's just like if we don't want to get sick with a cold, which is caused by our virus, what do? We make sure we get plenty of rest and sleep. We make sure we eat properly. We make sure we keep proper hygiene, all those types of things, so our body has less stress and we're less likely to succumb to it. So that's kind of how we have to deal with viruses in plants as well. And so they're a little bit harder because we can't technically kill them, but what we can do is we can lessen their severity. We can treat the symptoms by, giving them fertilizer if they need it and things like that, and withhold it if they don't need it. But in general, the best way to deal with viruses, once they're there, is to yank those individual plants out. The best way to deal with them is to try to keep them from being mixed conditions so that they're not there in the first place. And there's a lot more to this subject, and maybe something that we should talk about for another day. If you have any other questions, go ahead and shoot us an email or send us something on the website saying, gee, I'd like to know a little bit more about disease control, and we'll talk a little bit about disease control. We'll talk a little bit about I'll have some more articles. We'll deal with insects and how they can sometimes affect diseases. I could have mentioned that, but we've only got a short amount of time.